Who are we? We are the helping hands caressing progress into being. The beating heart pumping hope through harsh times, the harbinger of optimism, the very definition of development. We are the ones who mold rough moments into monuments, who take struggle and sculpt it into strategy until we are living statues of resilience. We are the embodiment of my brother's keeper, the seekers of justice and equality, performing altruistic alchemy, transmuting despair and poverty into the fertile ground of shared prosperity. We are the silent solution at the last hour. That presence that brings a better tomorrow.
In 1994, the unemployment rate was very high. So as part of an OECS delegation to Barbados, there was a symposium which took place, which highlighted what are the needs of the young persons around 18 to 35 and how those needs can be measured and met. The young persons who were part of the focus group identified that there is a lack of support for those persons who are interested in getting into business. And some of the support that they identify was business advice, was long-term training to give them the right type of mindset and knowledge to run their businesses, and then short-term trainings to keep them updated on what is happening. So they needed people who were businessmen and women to support them through the process. And that's one of the reasons that BYBT was set up.
NGOs and CSOs are more development type organizations. The cliche that is often used to differentiate that from charity is, if you give a man a fish, that's charity. If you teach me how to get it for myself on a long-term basis, that would be development work. Everybody understands, oh, they do good work, they do charitable work. Yeah, these are good organizations. But the depth of work, the consistency of work, the level of contribution, that's not recognized by the public.
Our sector is much bigger than charitable work, which I certainly agree is critical and important, especially to vulnerable groups. We tend to go to communities first, engage with civil society at the community and national level, get their views and perspectives, from which we undertake research and form our policy positions. And then we advocate in the regional international fora on behalf of our sector to ensure that our voices are heard within those spaces.
We don't just advocate, but we also help to find solutions and work closely with government to ensure that more persons with disabilities can have access to a meaningful education. And we also work with the international NGOs, local NGOs, private sector entities, and so on, to implement programs that can really ensure that persons with disabilities have more opportunities for their overall empowerment.
Activism for me started because of the loss of friends. You know, Vern Romulus in 2005, Jermaine Nestor in 2006, Marcellus Augustine in 2007. Gay men who were brutally murdered. We need to do more to ensure that others do not end up like them. And that's the foundation of my advocacy.
Green Coda was formed from a grassroots initiative by some community activists who felt that from the spirit of the revolution, they wanted to continue this community togetherness. And the aim was to establish that among men, women, fisher folks, young people in rural communities in Grenada. Grenada depends on about 90% of what we eat, we import that. And Grand Coda being, a roots community-based organization. We wanted to help farmers with their food security.
They've been the guardians of gullies, resurrecting canopies killed by greed and gross negligence, replanting the seed of intelligence into the relevant authorities. They've uprooted problematic policies, pillaging coral cities, stripping seas of biodiversity, leaving shores naked and exposed. The Caribbean knows Mother Nature and the force of her summer breath. Its lingering stench suffocating sustainability. We've seen mangroves massacred and forests fractured by indifference. We understand the importance of our mission, and we amplify the key voices so the whole world can listen.
Sustainable development depends on young people being involved, because if young people are not involved, the future becomes at peril. What comes to mind in terms of programs that have raised awareness among young people, environmental awareness, would be, for example, the 1.5 to Stay Alive program. That campaign, which started in the Caribbean, the CYN chapter in St. Lucia, working along with Dr. Jimmy Fletcher, were able to make that 1.5 to Stay Alive campaign a global campaign. And to this day, people still talk about 1.5 to Stay Alive as a baseline for the survival of small and developing states. So that program is one that I'm extremely proud of.
Sustainable living is not new to us. That's how we live back in the day. We're one with the environment. We have deep respect for nature, for Mother Earth. Because of cultural erosion, we've seen a shift from traditional values and respect for land. And so what we're doing at Satim is to really work with the communities, reviving traditional knowledge so that we can restore not just these traditional values, but also our identity. Our model is such that we empower communities. We train them how to go out and gather data, how to identify tree species, how to do measurements. We train them also in GPS, reading, how to go out and navigate within the forest. We strongly believe that we hold the solutions, our community hold the solutions to issues that they face. And I think that this is a very important thing when we look at the Caribbean as well. We have the solutions to everything here in the Caribbean. And we need to look at our population, at our people, for these answers. It's not out there in Europe, it's not in the US, it's here.
The core mission and our major focus are to improve the quality of life for our members. We have to help them in every aspect of their lives because there are so many aspects of what they do that are not supported by anybody else, government or otherwise. So to make the quality of life sustainable, we need to put in a sustainable, comprehensive agriculture and food production system. There's a lot of words, but it simply means that we must be able to move out of silos, working among individuals, but as a group in uniting to ensure that things are done the way they should be done.
I hope you know the wonder that is we. Rebelling woman silenced by his story, she reweaves a defiant retelling. Slicing through Father Time like a steady cutlass, she flees abuse, carrying her entire life in a one plastic bag. Walking her trauma miles to arrive at the gates of healing. Counting, dividing, sharing, weaving womanomic recipes. Carving out degrees from a paltry salary. Trodding resilience to make her own way to freedom. I hope you know this wonder that is we. This wonder that is woman warrior love, the birth of all ye.
Our organization supports girls at risk by providing mentorship and advocacy programs for them at different stages of their development. what we try to do that within our organization, even if the programs are short term, is that they're holistic in terms of addressing key areas within that stage of development. So we work with adolescents. So ensuring that whenever they come through a program with us, whether it's 3 months, they get access to counselors, they get access to tutors, they get access to food and transport assistance. We address skills development and work readiness. So at least when they leave, they get a little bit of everything.
Winner is an organization that goes into communities and have a conversation with women. So it's not a situation where we go and we talk to you or we talk at you and saying, well, you have to do this and this is the correct way. No, we sit and we have a conversation with the women. What are your experiences? What are your lived realities? So that their voices are heard. And then coming out of that and the research and data that is gathered, we can then advocate for those women and impact policy change. So an example of that would be the abolition of child marriage in Trinidad and Tobago in 2017. And WINAD was very instrumental in bringing NGOs together to advocate for the abolition of child marriage in Trinidad and Tobago, which they were successful in.
The work that has to get done is not a 8 to 4 job. So I think a lot of people do not necessarily clock the amount of time activism actually takes from us. How much time it takes from us being away from home and the loved ones.
In the domain of policymakers of governments throughout the region and even the private sector throughout the region, the specified and special knowledge and expertise that NGOs have developed from working in communities that are underserved by social and economic services, that is not taken into account seriously enough and consistently enough. So over the past 3 decades, we've seen a growth in consultation between governments and the NGO sector. But when you look at the policy outcomes from those consultations, you do not see reflected in it the specific contributions, concerns, recommendations that NGOs have made to those particular policy issues. So the influence of NGOs on the policy framework in the Caribbean is not as strong as it could be. The tragedy of that is that the benefits that NGOs can bring, if those recommendations were taken on board, that is lost to our communities.
As usual, the biggest challenge the organization faces is resources. And not only financial resources, but also human resources. What we have found particularly since the COVID pandemic, there's been a lot more individualism. I don't want to say selfishness, but that comes to mind. People are very much into themselves. And so the whole landscape of volunteerism has changed. People will volunteer if they can see what they're really getting from it. And a lot of volunteers now want to be compensated for what they do. And that's a big change from what it was back in the 1990s.
I'm very grateful for the staff that I have who can be very understanding of the low or no cash flow at certain points, and they continue to work. That is why I'm saying I love this company. I love what we do. I love the efforts that the staff are putting in, because at times it is drawing on that passion to continue to move even when you're not compensated for it.
And so I sprout solutions from lands barren by exploitation, incubating innovation in the cradle of my mind. I bear arms of knowledge, fighting against injustice, trusting a war waged to reclaim my humanity is a battle worth fighting for. I fight because failure should be a foreign language made incoherent by my persistence. I fight to dismantle dysfunctional systems, closing the distance in the wealth gap. I build bridges and build back homes made hollow by hurricanes. I am the healing rain for wounded terrains and forgotten forests. I acknowledge all as family and kin. I am that presence that brings hope and growth. I am NGO.
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 I am NGO.